how's it going everybody? Chaotic here with a fresh early access review. Today we're going to be looking at the good, neutral, and evil aspects of So before we jump into it, I do just want to say that this game is in early access and is, at the time of this recording, only on patch 3. So keep that in mind, because the full release of the game may bring changes to some of the things I talk about. And one last thing, if you're still watching at this point, I assume I do still have your interest. So if you want more of this type of content, please be sure to hit that like button and subscribe. Turn on that notification bell just so you can catch new content as it comes out. And without further ado, to kick things off, I wanted to start with the good stuff. So why not just go with the most noticeable outright aspect of the game, that being the visuals, which are absolutely stunning in Baldur's Gate 3. I mean, just look at this clip from the opening cutscene. Look at that. The realistic face, the flesh tones, the sweat actually looks like sweat. Anyway, sorry, I'm getting off task. The beautiful graphics don't end there, though, because the actual gameplay looks great as well. And while we're on the topic of gameplay, Baldur's Gate 3 has a very smooth, turn-based combat system that takes the idea of Dungeons & Dragons style combat and adds enough video game-isms to, in my opinion, not turn away people who've never played D&D before. I'll go more into the differences between D&D and Baldur's Gate 3 in a future video, but for now just know that the combat works in this game, and it works really well. The sound design in this game is also top tier. Everything from the music, to the voice acting, to the combat sounds, is obviously something that a lot of work was put into, and man, I am grateful for it. Related to the voice acting is the dialogue, which is done extremely well in this game. It's very well written, it's very relevant to the world setting, and dialogue options can even change based on decisions you make while playing the game. Even your race, class, and subrace can give you previously unseen dialogue options, and dialogue options can also net you some experience points, seeing as this game rewards you for taking a pacifist approach in some situations. Yes, you can actually play this game while trying your best to avoid conflict and still level up along the way. So, Undertale, eat your heart out. Okay, now there are so many more things good about this game, but I don't want this to be an hour-long video, and we still have to cover the bad aspects and the just kinda okay stuff in the game as well. So, I'm just gonna rapid fire off some more good things, okay? Alright, so here we go. Every party member you meet has their own side story. Pretty much every major character interaction feels authentic and genuine. There are areas of the game that you likely won't discover your first time through, which gives it quite a bit of replay value. The races you're allowed to play aren't just limited to the good guy races in D&D, so you can play a race that's typically viewed as evil and still play through the game quite successfully. Though, as I said before, certain things will change about the game if you do so. Decisions you make in the game actively affect how your party members view your character. Okay, so there's a lot more, but I'm just going to call it there for the sake of saving time. If all you wanted to know was what's good about the game, there's most of it. But the game isn't perfect. It's far from it. So let's go to the more meh aspects of the game. And before we get started, let me clarify what I mean by meh. It's things that are just okay. I don't necessarily think these things are good or bad in any way. It's just stuff that I don't think is personally very impactful, and it's probably along the lines of being forgettable. So, here we go. Character creation. This is the most middle-of-the-road aspect of the entire game for me. While the character you customize does indeed look fantastic, the number of options you have beyond your choice of race and class, more specifically subclass, just feels very limited. I mean, there are 2 masculine voices and 2 feminine voices, and there's not a lot of range between the voices either. While both voice options of each type are pretty different from one another. For me, one is just significantly better than the other on my ear, And so every character I've made of either option has had the same voice. There are only about 3 to 6 face options depending on what race and gender you select, and only 6 playable classes are currently in the game. 5 of those classes are held by the NPCs who can join your party, and it just feels lackluster. It's not bad, you do have options, and in order to explore all the subclasses, you probably will have to make your own character because some of the NPCs that join your party are already locked into a certain subclass. I just wish there were more character creation options. It's not a deal breaker for me, and like I said, it's early access, so this will likely change going forward, but, you know, it's just kind of meh. Level cap. Currently, the game caps your characters at level 4, which is extremely okay. It's only just okay because it's an early access game. If this were a fully released game and you were locked to being 4th level, then I would be complaining about it. But honestly, it's something that I do see changing before the full release of the game comes out. And for anyone who isn't aware, Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, which is the system that this game is largely based on, is a game that takes your character from level 1 to level 20. But objectively, the most fun section of the game is from levels 5 to 10. As a D&D player, I was let down by the fact that you can't get to 5th level because that's where stuff starts getting really, really fun. You know, with the full release of this game, I'm sure it'll open up and you'll be able to bypass that. But right now, you get just to the crux of being able to do really cool things, but you're being held back from being able to do it, and it just kind of feels bad. Take solace, though, in the fact that if you use cheating software and pump yourself past 4th level, which can be done, it does look like some of the foundation has been laid for higher levels. It just hasn't been completely set up yet, which I assume is why it isn't implemented. Ability score generation. This could easily have been lumped in with character creation, but I have a lot to say about this particular aspect, so I thought I'd give it its own section. In D&D 5th edition, there are 3 methods for generating a character's ability scores. That being a standard array, a point-buy system, and a just roll for it method. And in this game, the only one of these systems that exists is a point-buy system, which is fine. But for me, it's just a little underwhelming. I understand it for balancing reasons, but I feel like for those who just want to play the game in a single-player aspect, there should be no reason why you can't just roll for your ability scores to try and get your scores higher. Especially when we start talking about the game's difficulty of encounters, and we're going to do that right now. Our first topic in the evil aspects of the game, or the things that I like to call bad about the game, is the combat encounter balance. This is probably my biggest problem with the game, and I hope some tweaks will be made before the full release. Combat encounters in this game, they start out fine, but end up being pretty inconsistent when you get to levels 3 and 4. There are legitimately encounters in this game that I just don't think you're supposed to be able to take on until your party hits level 5, except, you know, like I just talked about, you can't be level 5. Without spoiling anything, the enemies in this game are just out for blood, and they will absolutely use the environment, guerrilla warfare tactics, ganging up on you with mass numbers, control spells. Anything they have at their disposal, they're going to use against you, and if you're not extremely tactical in some fights, or if you accidentally trigger an encounter when you didn't realize there were a large number of enemies in the area, you're probably gonna get ran over. It can seem very unwinnable in these situations. Now, you can just boot a previous save and go more carefully into the area, but if you are not someone who prefers to do those type of things, I could see where this can get really frustrating really fast. Personally, I love a challenging encounter, but I know that a lot of people that play this kind of game, that's not what they're looking for. I want to think that this will be resolved upon the full release, but I have no evidence of that being the case, so for now, I'm just going to lump it under bad stuff and call it a day. Camera controls. Or I guess, more accurately, I should have titled this section a lack of camera control, because that's really what the problem is. You see, in Baldur's Gate 3, when you load into an area, you're given a camera angle, and that's the camera angle that you're stuck with until you get the area to reload. Sometimes it's just a mild inconvenience, but sometimes it can be extremely frustrating and shatter your immersion in the game. I've actually lost count the number of times my camera's been stuck in a wall or a corner when I've been trying to activate something, and I have to struggle with it for a minute or so to fix it. When the camera angle is fine, you know, it's okay, it's not a big deal. But when the camera angle is a problem, which is far too often to ignore, The first time or two that you have to struggle with the camera just leaves a permanent sour taste in your mouth about the whole experience. There's another game that falls into a similar vein as this one, and I'm pretty excited to also do a review about that, where they actually don't have this problem. But that's for another video. Party member death. If a party member dies, and you don't have access to revive them, they permanently hold a slot in the party. This effectively reduces your party from a maximum of 4 to a maximum of 3. It's extremely annoying, because even if you have NPCs waiting in your camp to join your party, you can't add them because you're unable to remove the dead member from your party. In order to switch out the dead member, you have to go revive them first, which is counterintuitive, because if you can revive them, then why not just keep them in your party in most cases? And why this is a thing, I just don't understand. I hope it's fixed before the full game releases, and I have high confidence that it will be. But while there are admittedly several ways to revive dead party members, I don't feel there's a reason I should have to do it in order to get a 4th party member, even for a temporary period of time. And yeah, that's about it. I haven't covered the multiplayer aspects of the game because I haven't been able to successfully matchmake with anyone, and I don't have any friends who also own the early access version of this game, so I don't really have anything to talk about on that front. But as far as the single player aspects of the game and the core game mechanics and what's available to us right now, this is what I've got. So where would I rate it? Overall, I'd say the positives definitely outweigh the negatives, and I think many of these issues will be resolved before the game goes into full release sometime next year. I give it a tentative 7 out of 10. It's a pretty good game. It's got a lot of potential, and if they fix even half of the things that I've talked about, this will end up being a very, very good game. But I'll give that review when it goes to a full release. So until next time, this is Chaotic Light, and I'm signing out.